If you're running the free and open source AI agent OpenClaw with a flat rate subscription plan such as ChatGPT Plus or Anthropic's Claude Pro or Google AI Studio & Co., be aware, you are likely already violating the terms. In fact, people were banned or blocked in the past for exactly doing this. And the worst part, I actually recommended this setup in one of my last videos. Okay guys, so here's what happened. A lot of people, myself included, were previously using OpenClaw with flat rate plans because on paper it just made complete sense, yeah? You pay a fixed price per month and basically get unlimited usage that you can use for AI workloads, at least in the defined rate limit windows, of course. So naturally, people started plugging that into OpenClaw, running agents, automating workflows, and letting it run for hours and hours. And for a while, that seemed to work completely fine. But then reports started showing up. For some people, credentials stopped working, accounts got suspended, and that's when it became clear this was never really a supported feature in the first place. It was always a gray zone workflow that felt reasonable from the outside, but once you understand how it actually works, it becomes pretty obvious why the vendors needed to react. So here's the thing. Normally there are two clearly separated plans of using cloud-based LLMs. If you want automation, you just use an API token and pay based on the usage, depending on how large the model is and how many input and output tokens you need. That can get quite expensive. So this is basically why everybody wants to use flat rate subscription plans. Many vendors even offer a free plan for AI usage, or if you need more requests, you can always upgrade to a higher plan. But at the end of the day, compared to the cost of an API token, that is always a good deal and so much cheaper. But the caveat is that you usually have to log into the vendor's own interfaces with their preferred applications, such as Anthropic's Claude Code or OpenAI's ChatGPT interface and so forth. Now, OpenClaw did something supposedly smart. They took an OAuth login session, something that was originally meant for human usage, inside the vendor's own apps and reused it to run automated agent workloads. So on the current version of OpenClaw, you can still log in with Claude CLI or use OpenAI's Codex OAuth. And on the surface, honestly, that feels completely reasonable. I mean, you're paying for a subscription, most of the time a huge amount of money every month. So why wouldn't you use it? But Anthropic's documentation make the boundary very clear. They describe the subscription OAuth as being meant for ordinary use in native Anthropic applications. And they explicitly say that third-party developers should not offer Claude AI logged in or route requests through subscription credentials on behalf of their users, including agents built on the Claude Agent SDK. And similar language exists across all the other providers as well. Now, the real problem with this is not just policy or vendors being evil, it's simply economics. The easiest way to compare this is to something like a video service, something like Netflix, where you also get basically unlimited access to movies and TV shows. But of course, the whole model only works because most people don't watch movies all day and night. And AI subscriptions basically work the same way. You pay $20 a month, $100 a month, maybe even $200 a month, but you don't normally sit there all day and sending prompts without a break. But of course, OpenClaw completely changes this. Instead of occasional human usage, you suddenly have agents that run 24/7, constantly doing requests and automated workflows. And that is only one half of it. The other half is strategy, because these companies don't want to sell you computing resources. They want you inside their own ecosystem. May it be Claude Code, Gemini CLI, ChatGPT, Codex. That's how they keep you under control. And of course, OpenClaw completely bypasses that. From a vendor's perspective, that is the worst case scenario. It's high cost, it's low control, and it's no ecosystem locked in. Anyways, for a long time, that sat in a gray zone. It was never really allowed, but it also wasn't being enforced. But once OpenClaw started to get more public, this is where things started to change. The first sign already showed up around January this year, so I know I'm a little late with this story, but it goes on and on. This is where OpenClaw users first started reporting that Claude Code OAuth tokens no longer work. They got a very specific error saying the credential was only authorized for use with Claude Code. So at that point, something was already going on behind the scenes. Then Google took things a step further and make an enforcement public. So this was an official Gemini CLI discussion about the so-called anti-gravity bans. Google acknowledged that users in fact have been banned for policy violations tied to third-party tools. Then they kind of rolled back a little, but also made it clear that a second violation could lead into a permanent ban. They also updated their terms of service, clearly saying that directly accessing the services powering Gemini CLI using third-party software tools or services, for example, using OpenClaw with the Gemini CLI OAuth plugin is a violation of acceptable terms and policies, and such actions may be grounds for suspension or termination of your account. Anthropic's reaction was a bit different. At first, they also locked out users from their services, but then they rolled back because of the community backlash. And they then took kind of a different and smarter direction because they changed their model in a way that when you're using Claude plans, could be automatically routed into the extra usage plan. So they don't really lock you out of their service or they don't ban accounts, but they start to bill you based on the usage of third-party tools, which might be even more dramatic if you don't notice it. OpenAI is surprisingly the quietest part of this story, so I want to be a little more careful here because I didn't really find any verified sources of accounts that have been banned by OpenAI or stuff like that. So they seem to be a little more open to users using their flat rate plans with tools like OpenClaw, but they still have some sentences in their terms of service where they say you may not use our services for any illegal, harmful, or abusive activity. And that basically could mean anything. If they somehow decide that using AI automated workflows with flat rate plans is an abusive activity, that of course could also change the whole story. And of course, vendors are constantly updating their terms of service. So I would be at least a little cautious when using OpenAI flat rate plans with OpenClaw, and certainly avoid using Anthropic's Claude or Google's AI Studio plans, such as anti-gravity and so on. So if you really want to go the safe route, you unfortunately have to use API tokens and you have to pay for what you use when using OpenClaw. This is the best way to do this. Or if you have the computing power at home, you could always use local LLMs, of course. One thing that also might be an interesting alternative is Minimax, especially their newest model, Minimax M2.7, because they seem to be completely open to using their models with OpenClaw. They also have some applications like MaxClaw, which seem to be a fork or a special version of OpenClaw that you can run directly in Minimax. So honestly, I have not been playing around with this too long because Minimax is a Chinese company and I don't really trust the results of these models. I've done some experiments and it seems to be okay, yeah, but certainly models like OpenAI's ChatGPT 5.4 or Anthropic's Claude Sonnet, they're honestly a lot better. Nevertheless, there are alternatives out there that are a bit cheaper or might be a little more safe, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Are you still using OpenClaw with flat rate subscriptions? If so, did you get banned? Did you get blocked or limited? Or did you already switch to API keys or using local LLMs? Please tell me in the comments. I really would like to know. And if you have not seen my OpenClaw tutorial yet, please just ignore the recommendation with the flat rate plans. Of course, I leave your link to this tutorial in the description box down below. Thanks for watching. A big thanks goes out to all of my community members, YouTube and Patreon supporters. You guys are really awesome. And of course, I'm going to catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.